You should know that our mission is to grow the South. We will surely need to and will succeed. And you all must feel like missionaries. You must feel that you are part of a company that makes its work a mission, a philosophy of life. What you have heard are the words of Pasquale Natuzzi, a man who started 60 years ago from a small artisan workshop, a 3x3 meter hole in the heart of Puglia. And today, the director of an organization listed on the New York Stock Exchange since 1993, with active factories in Italy, China, Brazil, and Romania. The two brands, Natuzzi Italia and Natuzzi Editions, make up a retail network with more than 710 single-brand stores around the world. In this passage from a speech given at one of the last company conventions, Pasquale lays bare his idea of work and organization, and it is immediately obvious that it is through his mindset and spirit that he has built his success and that of his company. Of course, these 60 years have not been without dark moments, but every fall has been followed by an ascent, made possible by the determination of one man, Pasquale Natuzzi, and the commitment of the people who still every day accompany him on this exhilarating journey. What we will tell you is the story of a man and his enterprise, a story of success and redemption of an entire territory. The story of Pasquale Natuzzi and the Natuzzi Group. Matera, August 11th, 1973. It's hot, and thoughts are already flying to the well-deserved vacation. It should be a day of celebration, greetings, prize-giving, and vacation well-wishes. But fate has another plan in store. An electrical short circuit generates a small flame, and in a workshop full of semi-finished and finished products, starts a raging fire. Within minutes, the acrid smell of smoke turns the air unbreathable. Charcoal covers everything, and the flames consume each thing. Pasquale Natuzzi is left with his sofa workshop completely destroyed, with debts and the closure of credit lines from banking institutions. In short, he finds himself at a loss. Now, let's leave Pasquale for a moment to grapple with the smoldering rubble of his small sofa factory and take a step back to find out how the desperate situation of that August day in 1973 came about. The protagonist of our story, the second of 7 children, was born in Matera on Easter Day, March 24th, 1940. That morning, in his homily from St. Petersburg, Pope Pius XII called for peace and unity as war ravaged Europe. And a few months later, in June of that same year, Italy also entered the conflict. Pasquale grew up quickly in the climate of post-war reconstruction and soon began contributing to the household income. His parents, Annunziata and Vintantonio, moved from Matera to Toronto, and when he was only 8 years old, Pasquale would go out early in the morning to deliver milk to customers of his mother's grocery store. And in the afternoon, he worked as an apprentice in his father's cabinet maker's store. At age 13, at his father's request, he quit school to help full-time. As the months pass, however, he realizes that the trade is not for him. My father voted Christian Democrat, but I think he basically was a communist, because there were 7 of us children, and he thought of the family as a community that had to be managed and protected. So the children were all supposed to be equal, and I was pawing instead. I wanted to run, but to tell my father that I did not want to work in the family and I wanted to work on my own took great courage, because my father had a hand was equivalent to a mechanical shovel. He would later recall to La Storia Siamo Noi. Pasquale begins as an apprentice at the upholsterer next door and becomes so passionate about it that at 19 he decides to set up his own business. The year is 1959. Natuzzi is born from a small workshop in Toronto. In 1962, Pasquale moves the business to Matera, but the employees who followed him miss home too much and return to Toronto after a few months. Pasquale is forced to change his plans. He abandons manufacturing and turns to trading, betting on the furniture business. But things do not go as hoped for, and after 5 years of hard work, Pasquale is drowning in debt. The young Natuzzi once again finds the strength to get back on his feet. He returns to his first love, designing and building sofas. And in the early 1970s, he restarts production by creating Natuzzi Salotti. Immediately, things start to take a turn for the better. But 1973 arrived, and on August 11th, a short circuit and a terrible fire literally sent everything up in smoke. Remember, it is ground zero. We then find Pasquale again where we left him, desperately searching for something to save among the smoldering remains of his small factory in Matera. The despondency is short-lived. There is no time. To save Natuzzi, we must act now, and Pasquale knows it. The previous year, he had bought land in Santaramo and Colli, in the Apulian hinterland, with the idea of starting the construction of a new headquarters. Work had just begun, but after the August 11th fire, that building under construction became a lifeboat in stormy waters. With the help of employees, Pasquale quickly closes doors and windows, installs second-hand machinery, and retrieves the templates of models by dismantling the last sofas on display in the store. Thus, with tenacity and passion, he resumes production. Just a week after the fire, on August 18th, Natuzzi loads the first truck of sofas destined for the province of Potenza. The resumption has already begun. Through commitment, sacrifice, and renunciation, things begin to improve. But this is not enough for Pasquale. The Italian market, still fragmented and dominated by the furniture from Brianza and the Northeast, is not enough to develop his vision. His goal then becomes finding an outlet abroad, and the opportunity presented itself in 1975 during a furniture fair in Bari, where he made contact with some buyers from the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Jordan. Already the following year, Natuzzi was exporting 60% of its sales to these countries. But it is in Cologne in 1977 that the real turning point occurs. Booth prices at the German fair are prohibitive, and Natuzzi can only afford 12 square meters. He then decides to go for the element of surprise and exhibits just one sofa, the new Navajo leather model. His boldness makes an impression, and the Belgian company Univers de Quia chooses to believe in Natuzzi, who then begins to export to Northern Europe as well, specializing in the production of leather upholstered furniture. It is the late 1970s, and Natuzzi is growing at a relentless pace. Sales are taking off, employees and turnover are increasing. But as is inevitable for any successful company, evolution must be continuous, and a new curveball is always just around the corner. Or almost, since in this case, we have to jump overseas. In 1982, during a trip to New York, Pasquale Natuzzi is struck by the exorbitant prices of leather sofas on display in Manhattan. He does some quick math and realizes that he could offer a made-in-Italy product of similar quality at a competitive price. He then knocks on the door of Macy's & Co., one of America's largest chain stores, and negotiates with the commercial giant without the slightest awe, and without giving in to demands for exclusivity. Thus was born the famous $999 sofa, launching, in Pasquale's words, The democratization of the leather sofa. In 1986, Natuzzi had 247 employees and a turnover of almost 60 billion old lira. In short, the company is thriving and turning over good profits. But every day, a line of people forms in front of the factory asking for work. From the desire to give those people employment, to create opportunities and a better quality of life for them, comes the drive to grow, reinvest earnings in the company, build new factories, and conquer new markets. It was this goal in mind that a few years later, Pasquale made a surprising strategic decision to list the company on Wall Street. That's right. In 1993, Pasquale Natuzzi's Apulian company listed on Wall Street. A few years later, in 1998, architect Mario Bellini builds Natuzzi America's new headquarters in High Point, North Carolina. The building, which opens to the city through a totally glass facade, is designed to resemble a ship whose prow, in Pasquale's words, symbolizes our natural tendency to look forward with optimism. And it is an optimism well justified when we consider that in 2008, Pasquale Natuzzi became the first non-American to be inducted into the American Furniture Hall of Fame. In the early 1990s, Natuzzi comes to produce 95% of its sales in America. But the company's beating heart is and remains in Puglia. And it is there that Natuzzi's success has the greatest impact. The doing business of the protagonist of our story becomes fertilizer for the Alta Murgia, an area of high plateau that slopes gently down to the Adriatic Sea, a karst landscape of caves, vines, and olive trees, steeped in millennial history and charm, but lacking in outstanding production. Here, Pasquale's business model generates a massive inducement, but also emulation. A fast-growing upholstered furniture district develops a small miracle of the South, exceptional because it was born despite some glaring disadvantages such as the shortage of raw materials, distance from markets, and lack of infrastructure. Between 1971 and 2001, the number of people employed in the furniture sector between Santoramo, Altamura, and Matera rose from 46 to 11,000, engaged in more than 300 companies along the entire supply chain. In 1997, a full page in the Corriere della Sera announces that 700 workers are being sought for hire in the living room triangle. Such turmoil makes it essential to take care of the preparation of people in order to count on skilled workers hired and placed on professional growth paths. And then, thanks to the vision of its founder, Natuzzi does it and does it well. So much so that in 2001, the company's ability to do training is rewarded. Pasquale Natuzzi receives an honorary degree in educational sciences from the University of Bari. Meanwhile, a number of cases of undeclared work come to light in the Salado Triangle, which Natuzzi strongly condemns and is committed to combating. His dedication to the cause is such that Pasquale goes so far as to hold a hearing at the House Budget Committee, and in 2011 receives the Anti-Defamation League's Lifetime Achievement Award. But let's go back to the history of the company. Until the early 2000s, Natuzzi experienced a real takeoff, thanks in part to the intuition to create a retail project to infiltrate the difficult Italian market more deeply. We are talking about Divani e Divani. Launched in the early 1990s to allow the company to directly manage distribution and the buying experience, and in a few years it became the first Italian chain of franchise stores specializing in the leather sofa, with more than 100 outlets. The globalization of markets, China's entry into the WTO, and the resulting price competition from new competitors from low labor cost countries led Pasquale to evolve Natuzzi with a home lifestyle project, developing a dual brand strategy to reach a wider and more diverse audience. Natuzzi Italia, a luxury furniture brand entirely designed and produced in Italy, aimed at an affluent and sophisticated global consumer. And Natuzzi Editions, a brand with a wide and versatile range, entirely designed in Italy and produced in the group's foreign factories, close to its target markets. Thus, Pasquale's choices have enabled the company to attack the market in the most effective way and to maintain an important production in Italy. In short, globalize in order to stay local. The small artisan workshop in Toronto today is unrecognizable, transformed into a unique entity that completely controls its own supply chain, has a network of 710 single-brand stores, sells its products worldwide, and employs more than 4,000 people. Yet for those who know its history, an echo of that small store can be recognized in today's highly efficient company. In the care, attention to detail, passion, and love for the work, the product, and the people who make it. There is an internal motto at Natuzzi that reads, "I work, I create work." Here, perhaps this is the most important message that is captured in the story of Pasquale Natuzzi and his company. The importance of thinking as a community with shared interests, goals, and vision. Because only together, only through everyone's commitment, is it possible to create successful companies like Natuzzi. The story of Pasquale Natuzzi was written by Radical HR and written by Fabrizio Tomasini, with coordination by Alessia Saponi and editing by Danielle Cocchi. For Natuzzi, supervision by Giacomo Ventaloni.